Welcome back to True Echo, where real stories echo louder than fiction. Today's episode is not just a story of humiliation, it's a battle against injustice, corporate corruption, and racism at 30,000 feet. When a powerful black CEO is ordered out of her first-class seat to make room for a white VIP, her quiet defiance sparks a global reckoning. What she does next will leave an entire airline gasping, and a corrupt executive in handcuffs. You won't believe how it ends. Stay with us, because this is the story they never expected her to tell. Jessica Carter adjusted the cuff of her Armani blazer as she stepped onto the red carpet leading into the private terminal at LAX. Her movements were precise, practiced, the rhythm of a woman who had earned everything. As the founder and CEO of Pinnacle Investments, Jessica had navigated Wall Street boardrooms, billion-dollar negotiations, and hostile takeovers. But today wasn't about any of that. Today was about flying across the country to sign the largest single investment her firm had ever made, a $120 million agreement with SkyWest Airlines. Her black leather briefcase swung by her side as she presented her first-class boarding pass to the gate agent. The man barely glanced at it. "Have a good flight, Ms. Carter," he said with a warm smile. She nodded politely and made her way into the cabin. Seat 2A. Window seat. Perfect. She sank into the plush leather, her muscles finally starting to unwind. Jessica reached for her tablet, preparing to review her pitch deck and final legal clauses for the meeting scheduled upon landing. But before she could begin, the aisle shifted with a different kind of energy. "Excuse me, ma'am," a voice said. Jessica looked up. A tall woman with pin-straight blonde hair, perfectly tucked into a corporate chignon, stood beside her seat. Her flight attendant badge read Emily Stevens. Her smile was thin, formal. "May I see your boarding pass again, please?" Jessica blinked in surprise. "Of course," she said calmly, tapping on her phone and pulling up her digital ticket. Jessica Carter. Seat 2A. Emily leaned in closer, looking at the phone longer than necessary. Her eyes scanned Jessica's face with unsettling scrutiny. "And a photo ID, please." Jessica's brows furrowed. She wasn't accustomed to being asked for ID once already on board. Still, she reached into her wallet and handed over her driver's license and corporate card. Other passengers nearby were now watching. Emily took her time inspecting both cards, then looked back at Jessica with the faintest curl of distaste. "Please wait here. I'll return shortly." Jessica watched her retreat toward the galley with a strange knot forming in her stomach. Something wasn't right. The atmosphere had shifted. Curiosity from fellow passengers turned into judgmental whispers. Jessica straightened in her seat, heart thumping harder than she let show. In the galley, Vice President of Operations Bradley Thompson stood behind a coffee cart, arms crossed, face tight with irritation. He was a man who wore his power like armor, shiny, aggressive, and suffocating to everyone beneath him. Emily approached him with careful steps. "Sir, I verified everything. Jessica Carter is confirmed. Documents are in order." Bradley didn't flinch. "That's irrelevant." Richard Harris called from the gate. "He was bumped to economy, and he's pissed. He's a longtime VIP. Golf buddy. He's going in 2A. Emily's mouth opened, then closed. "But sir, Jessica Carter is a high-level investor. And she's the reason we're getting the $120 million deal." Bradley's glare silenced her. "She's not our kind of investor." Emily paled. "Make something up. Say it's a computer error. Tell her the system double-booked. I don't care how. Just get her out of that seat." Emily swallowed hard. "Yes, Mr. Thompson." Bradley leaned toward her, smirking coldly. Some people need to be reminded of their place. Back in the cabin, Jessica sat still, hands clasped over her knee. She looked out the window, though her mind was elsewhere, doing calculations, running scenarios. Something deep inside told her this wasn't just a mistake. Emily returned. This time, she wasn't polite. "Ms. Carter, there's been a seating conflict. I'm going to have to ask you to move to a seat in economy." The air was sucked out of first class. Jessica turned slowly. "Excuse me. It appears there was a glitch in the booking system. We're very sorry, but another guest's ticket has been revalidated for this seat." Jessica kept her voice composed. "I booked this flight 3 weeks ago. This is not a standby seat. I am not moving." Emily's face stiffened. "Ma'am, we must resolve this now. Security will assist if needed." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "Security?" And right on cue, 2 uniformed guards stepped into the cabin. The taller one rested his hand on a stun gun. "Ms. Carter," he said with clinical detachment, "we must ask you to comply with the flight crew's instructions." Jessica stood slowly, refusing to let her anger crack her composure. She turned to face the first-class passengers, now gawking like spectators at a public trial. "I will move only under duress," she said firmly. "And I do not consent to this action." She turned to Emily. "You will regret this decision." The guards flanked her as she walked the long aisle toward economy. Cameras clicked. Phones recorded. No one stopped her. But Jessica Carter wasn't walking away defeated, she was walking away with fire in her veins. Jessica Carter squeezed into the narrow seat in row 34, the last in the middle aisle between a coughing businessman and a woman clutching a noisy toddler. The tray table jammed into her knees. The armrest wouldn't stay up. The air back here was hotter, drier, and thick with the subtle stench of recycled discomfort. She straightened her spine and ignored the fact that her expensive wool blazer was already damp from the lack of ventilation. But Jessica's mind wasn't on the surroundings. She was already calculating. This wasn't about a seat. This was about a message. And SkyWest had just delivered theirs loud and clear, "Know your place." She wasn't surprised, it had happened before, in boardrooms and backdoors, in country clubs and contracts. But never this blatant. Never with so many witnesses. And certainly never when she held the upper hand. She checked her phone as the plane began taxiing. A buzz lit the screen, $25 million received from Pinnacle, SkyWest Phase 1 investment. Her brow arched ever so slightly. With a single tap, she opened her banking app and hovered her finger over a simple button, Revert Transaction. She tapped. In the SkyWest headquarters executive floor, alarms blinked across 3 monitors in the finance department. "Sir," a junior analyst called out, frowning at his screen. "The Pinnacle payment, it just reversed." Bradley Thompson, seated across the hall, was laughing over a brandy with Richard Harris in the private executive lounge. He hadn't yet realized the fire he'd just ignited. Back on the plane, Jessica tapped out a message to her legal team, "Pause all financial transfers to SkyWest immediately. Notify media contacts. Prepare litigation documents and PR package. Full escalation protocol." This just became war. As the flight ascended, the tension did too. 10 minutes into cruising altitude, a young flight attendant came down the aisle with a cart. When she reached Jessica's row, she didn't stop. "Excuse me," Jessica said calmly. "May I get some water?" The attendant glanced at her and replied with a shrug. "We're out right now. We'll try again later." But Jessica noticed something. Just 3 rows up, another passenger was sipping from a freshly opened bottle. Deliberate. Coordinated. Bradley's fingerprints were all over it. Jessica leaned back, opened her laptop, and tried to pull up the updated slides for her SkyWest presentation. Nothing loaded. The Wi-Fi was nearly non-existent back here. She flagged the attendant again. "Is the internet down?" "Should work," the girl replied flatly, clearly uninterested. "But the signal's weak in the back." Jessica gave a tight smile. Ah, so there is a front and back, policy-wise. The woman blinked, then walked off. 2 hours later, when the flight finally landed, Jessica powered on her phone and was immediately bombarded with pings, notifications, and missed calls. Her heart beat faster as she read the texts. "Are you okay? I just saw the video. Jessica, this is everywhere. Girl, you are trending." One video in particular had already reached 2.3 million views, a shaky but clear shot of Jessica being escorted out of first class by 2 guards while a flight attendant demanded she move. The caption read, "Black CEO kicked out of first class for white man, this airline better lawyer up." The comments below were a wildfire. "She handled that like a queen. Grace under fire. SkyWest about to get sued into bankruptcy. Imagine doing that to the person funding your company." Jessica didn't need to imagine it. As she exited the jetway, passengers around her paused, unsure whether to approach or give her space. But one young woman with braids and a Delta Airlines badge stepped forward hesitantly. "Ms. Carter. I just wanted to say, we saw what they did to you," she said, voice trembling with emotion. "And we're behind you. A lot of us have dealt with that kind of thing. But you, what you did, how you stood your ground, thank you." Jessica touched her hand gently. "This isn't over." Outside the terminal, a sleek black car waited to take her to the SkyWest headquarters where the contract signing was supposed to happen. She got in without a word, scrolling through the barrage of viral posts now flooding every platform: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, even LinkedIn. A trending hashtag glowed across the screen, #Justice for Jessica. By the time she arrived at SkyWest Tower, she knew 2 things for certain. 1, the world was watching now. 2, she wasn't walking into a boardroom. She was walking into a battlefield. She entered the grand marble lobby, where white executives in tailored suits were ushered in swiftly, nodding to the front desk guard who stood straight and stiff at her approach. He looked her up and down. "Name?" he asked brusquely. "Jessica Carter," she said calmly. "I have a 2 p.m. meeting." He didn't move. "You have ID?" She handed it over without flinching. The guard studied it too long. He tapped his walkie. "Hold on," he said, not returning her card. "Need to check." Jessica stood still as dozens of SkyWest employees walked by without so much as a glance at security. She saw the pattern. She knew the play. But today, they'd picked the wrong opponent. Just then, the elevator doors opened. Walter Kingston, SkyWest CEO, appeared looking pale and frantic. He rushed toward her. "Ms. Carter, I am so sorry for what happened. Please, come upstairs. Immediately. This is all a terrible misunderstanding." Jessica smiled tightly. "I think we passed misunderstanding several floors ago." Walter looked nervously at the gathering lobby crowd and hissed through clenched teeth. "Please, just give us a chance to fix this before it spirals further." Jessica stepped into the private elevator beside him. Her phone buzzed again. Another video of the incident had just passed 6 million views. Too late. As the private elevator rose in silence, Jessica Carter watched Walter Kingston out of the corner of her eye. The man was sweating under his suit jacket, tugging at his collar as if the air had turned toxic. It hadn't, he was simply choking on the pressure of his own corporate mess. "Jessica," he began, his voice low, desperate. "This wasn't personal. I had no idea what Bradley Thompson did until after the fact. Please believe me." Jessica didn't turn to look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the floor display as it ticked upward, 31, 32, 33. "You knew enough," she said evenly. "You didn't stop it. And you didn't speak out until your stock started bleeding." Walter flinched. The elevator doors opened to the executive level, revealing a long, glass-walled boardroom packed with every major SkyWest director and investor. Faces turned toward Jessica like a courtroom audience. Some wore nervous expressions. Others were flat with calculation. Walter gestured toward the head seat at the table. "Please." Jessica walked forward, the heels of her Louboutins tapping sharply on the tile. She didn't sit. Not yet. Her presence alone sent a shiver through the room. She placed her leather folder on the table with precision and pulled out a series of documents. Then she looked straight at Bradley Thompson, seated arrogantly near the middle of the table. His smirk twitched just slightly at the sight of her. Jessica spoke calmly. "Before we begin, let me clarify a few things. I am the woman you removed from first class. I am the person your staff humiliated in front of hundreds of witnesses. And I am the CEO of the firm that just froze your $120 million funding." Several board members exchanged alarmed looks. The tension rippled through the room. Bradley leaned forward, trying to control the narrative. "Let's not be dramatic. This was a clerical error. Our flight crew followed standard protocol." Jessica didn't blink. "You're lying." She slid a document across the table to Walter, whose hands trembled as he read it. "It's a cease and desist order," she explained. "From Pinnacle's legal division. Effective immediately, all financial transactions, negotiations, and partnerships between Pinnacle Investments and SkyWest Airlines are suspended pending a full independent investigation into this incident." Bradley laughed bitterly. "You think you can hold an entire corporation hostage over a misunderstanding?" "No," Jessica said. "I think I can hold it accountable for systemic racism, harassment, and retaliation. And I have the evidence to prove it." That night, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Jessica sat in her hotel suite, reviewing video submissions and messages from thousands of strangers, people sharing their own stories of discrimination in the skies. One message caught her attention. It was from someone unexpected. Emily Stevens. The same flight attendant who'd asked for Jessica's ID and enforced the removal. Her message was simple. "I have something you need to hear. I'm ready to talk." Jessica replied immediately. They met at a quiet corner table in a downtown cafe, far from reporters and cameras. Emily looked tired, drained, her posture small, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to do it," she said. "I knew who you were. I knew you had that seat. But Bradley," she hesitated, then reached into her coat. "He ordered me to do it. And I have proof." She slid a USB drive across the table. Jessica picked it up slowly. "It's a recording," Emily said. "From the galley. Right before I came back to your seat. He said, and I quote, 'I don't care who she is. Get her out of that seat. She needs to know her place.'" Jessica stared at her. "There's more," Emily continued. "He called me the next day. Told me to lie to HR, said if I didn't back the story about a computer error, he'd fire me. Said I'd never work in aviation again." Jessica reached across the table and placed her hand gently over Emily's. "Thank you. You just helped stop this from happening to someone else." Within 24 hours, Jessica's legal team had verified the recording and submitted a formal complaint to federal aviation regulators and the EEOC. The media exploded. News anchors aired the audio, playing Bradley's sneering orders to eject her. The public's outrage reignited like gasoline on flames. But Bradley wasn't finished. From his office, he made a calculated move, a smear campaign. Anonymous leaks to tabloids. Fake stories about Jessica's diva behavior on the plane. Claims that she had tried to use her status to intimidate staff. The headlines turned vicious. Black CEO weaponizes race card to sabotage airline deal. Insider, Jessica Carter was the real bully on Flight 882. His network of high society allies quietly funneled money to media outlets and online trolls. Hate mail poured in. Jessica's security detail was doubled. Her team began receiving death threats. For a moment, it worked. Pinnacle's board held an emergency meeting. Investors were spooked. Stock dipped. Some partners wanted to distance the firm from the scandal. Jessica stood at the head of the room as whispers circled around her. She didn't waver. "This is what happens when you challenge power," she said, voice calm but firm. "They try to drown you in noise. They try to shame you into silence. But we don't back down from bullies. Not when the truth is on our side." Then she dropped the bomb. "Bradley Thompson's voice is on record. Threatening his own employee. Lying to the public. And we have more coming. Much more." A stunned silence fell. That night, Jessica met with her investigative team. "We need every past complaint filed at SkyWest. I want statements from former employees, especially those who left under suspicious circumstances." Over the next few days, the floodgates opened. A black senior manager who was denied a promotion after years of loyalty. An Asian American HR rep pressured to quietly reject diverse candidates. A Latina gate agent who was demoted for speaking Spanish to passengers. All of them had one thing in common: Bradley Thompson. Jessica compiled it all. Testimonies. Documents. Patterns. This wasn't just an incident. It was a culture. And Bradley had built it. Back at SkyWest, Bradley began to feel the walls close in. His PR team failed to contain the backlash. Sponsors were pulling out. The boardroom, once filled with his supporters, now stared at him with suspicion. Still, he clung to one last hope: his old friend Judge Robert Harrington. A well-connected federal judge with ties to the airline industry, and more importantly, to Bradley's country club circle. If Jessica sued, Harrington could bury it. Muffle it. Delay it until she gave up. Bradley made the call. "She wants a war," he growled. "We'll give her one." The marble halls of the Monroe Federal Courthouse echoed with the footsteps of reporters, activists, and legal teams. Jessica Carter walked through the metal detectors flanked by her attorneys, the press swarming outside like hornets. But Jessica's face was calm, unreadable. She wore a sleek navy pantsuit, her afro pulled back into a sharp bun. She looked every bit the CEO, but more than that, she looked ready for battle. Inside courtroom 8B, Judge Robert Harrington presided over the pretrial hearing with the poise of a man too used to power. With his silver hair and patrician accent, he looked like the type of judge movie producers cast to play fairness. But Jessica had already seen behind the curtain. She knew who he was. She'd read the emails. Emails between him and Bradley Thompson. Emails where Bradley referred to her lawsuit as, "this PR mess Harrington can sweep." Jessica watched Harrington carefully, the way a seasoned chess player watches a rival tilt his hand. The hearing began. Her attorney, Erica Lynn, laid out the claims: wrongful removal, public humiliation, discrimination, retaliatory targeting, defamation, and systemic bias within SkyWest's corporate culture. Every piece of it was documented. Every recording authenticated. But then, like a magician yanking the curtain, Judge Harrington began his performance. "The court finds this audio recording inadmissible without direct consent from both parties," he said, his voice bored, almost rehearsed. "The affidavits from former employees are anecdotal and lack legal foundation. This motion to unseal internal HR complaints is denied, on grounds of employee privacy." Jessica's stomach dropped. Not from shock, she had expected this. But the gall of it still stung. She glanced toward Bradley, who sat smugly at the defense table, legs crossed, tapping a Montblanc pen against his chin. When he caught her eye, he gave the smallest smirk. The game was rigged. And he wanted her to know it. After recess, Judge Harrington leaned forward and addressed the court. "I suggest both parties consider private arbitration. This case, while unfortunate, doesn't warrant public spectacle. Let's avoid wasting further time or resources. Jessica stood slowly. Her voice was clear, unwavering. Your Honor, with respect, I am not seeking a private solution. I am seeking justice. And justice should never fear the light. For a moment, Harrington's lips twitched. Whether from irritation or fear, she couldn't tell. Outside the courtroom, Jessica's team regrouped in a private conference room. They're stonewalling us, Erica said. Harrington's protecting him. We all see it. Jessica nodded. Then we go around them. If the court won't hear the truth, the people will. She pulled out her phone and sent a single message to her PR director. Prepare for a press conference. Tomorrow morning. The next day, the world watched as Jessica Carter stepped to a podium outside the courthouse. Behind her stood former SkyWest employees of every race and background, each of them holding files, documents, or statements. Jessica's voice rang out across the microphones. I was removed from my seat not because of an error, but because of a culture. A culture where power protects itself. A culture where men like Bradley Thompson silence dissent and rewrite the rules. This is not just about one flight. This is about years of exclusion, intimidation, and cover-ups. And the man protecting him is wearing a robe. Gasps from the reporters followed. She held up a packet. These are emails between Bradley Thompson and Judge Robert Harrington, coordinating the suppression of this case. Discussing strategy. Planning to discredit my name. Camera flashes exploded. A journalist shouted, "Are you saying the judge is corrupt?" Jessica didn't blink. I'm saying we've got the receipts. And we've filed them with the Justice Department. By that evening, the media firestorm reached a breaking point. National outlets picked up the story. Hashtags like #ExposeHarrington and #BradleyTheBigot trended globally. The following day, the Department of Justice confirmed they were opening an investigation into judicial misconduct. Judge Harrington was placed on immediate administrative review. Bradley's world began to crack. Two of SkyWest's largest investors, Greengate Holdings and Eastbridge Capital, announced they were freezing all financial support pending internal review. Stock plummeted 19%. SkyWest's board convened an emergency meeting, and for the first time, Bradley was not invited. But he wasn't ready to surrender. In a dimly lit hotel bar that night, Bradley met with a known fixer, a man who specialized in high-level character assassination. I want everything on her, Bradley hissed. Everything. Her college records. Her old employers. Her family. Find me something I can use to ruin her. But there was nothing. Jessica's record was clean. Her reputation untouchable. Her team airtight. And now, she had the public on her side. What Bradley didn't realize was that Jessica hadn't come this far on wealth alone. She'd built her empire brick by brick, rising through the ranks, navigating boardrooms full of men who looked like him and believed worse. Every obstacle, every insult, had sharpened her resolve. And this one would be no different. Back at Pinnacle's offices, Jessica's executive team worked around the clock, preparing for a full civil lawsuit, not just against SkyWest, but against Bradley personally. Her legal strategy had shifted. This wasn't about negotiation anymore. This was war. And this time, there would be no safe landing for him. 2 weeks after the press conference that rocked the aviation world, the walls of SkyWest's corporate headquarters had lost their polish. The executive floor was no longer a quiet sanctuary of power but a battleground of panic, silence, and paranoia. And in the center of it all, Bradley Thompson was unraveling. He slammed his office door shut and shouted at his assistant not to let anyone in. Gone were the days when he strutted down the hallway like a monarch. Now, even junior analysts avoided eye contact. Headlines blared across every screen. SkyWest VP at Center of Discrimination Scandal faces federal inquiry. Emails reveal corruption between airline exec and federal judge. And the worst of all. Jessica Carter, CEO of Pinnacle Investments, files $150 million lawsuit against SkyWest and Thomson personally. Bradley tried to fight back. He hired a crisis firm. Threatened media outlets with cease and desists. Even tried to plant counter-narratives through friendly talking heads. But nothing stuck. The recordings, the testimonies, and most damning of all, the emails, had pulled the mask off completely. For Jessica, the moment had arrived to move from defense to offense. At Pinnacle's headquarters, she stood before her executive and legal teams, laser-focused and unshaken. "We're not just taking on SkyWest," she said. "We're putting the entire culture on trial." Erica Lynn, her lead attorney, laid out the plan. "We've scheduled depositions with former SkyWest employees, launched discovery motions, and filed complaints with the EEOC and the Department of Transportation." Another board member added, "Our PR campaign is working. Public opinion's on our side, and now SkyWest's board is divided. There's talk of removing Thomson, and Walter Kingston." Jessica nodded. "That's good. But we're not stopping at removal. We're going to make this right. For every person silenced, passed over, or humiliated by that man." A few days later, Jessica sat across from Sandra Reeves, a former Delta Airlines executive with a reputation for integrity and radical reform. Sandra had quietly resigned from Delta after exposing internal pay discrimination, and now she'd become a vocal supporter of Jessica's cause. "SkyWest needs to be rebuilt from the inside," Sandra said. "Not just lawsuits. Culture change." Jessica leaned forward. "Then help me. I'm not here just to win a case. I'm here to tear out the root." They shook hands. Back at SkyWest, chaos accelerated. Bradley Thomson received a summons, deposition in federal court. His attorney tried to postpone it. Denied. The board called an emergency vote. A motion was raised, immediate termination of Bradley Thomson and suspension of Walter Kingston, pending investigation. Bradley barged into the boardroom before the vote was finalized, shouting, "You can't do this. I built this company's reputation. This is a witch hunt." A senior board member stood, his voice cold and steady. "No, Bradley. You buried this company's reputation. And now, we're digging it out of your grave." The vote passed. Effective immediately. Bradley Thomson was fired. No ceremony. No settlement. Just a security escort and a sealed box of personal effects. His face ashen, he passed through the lobby, eyes avoiding every screen that broadcasted his downfall. Meanwhile, Jessica's legal team delivered a second blow. Using evidence from discovery, they revealed that SkyWest's HR department had knowingly destroyed internal complaints against Bradley over the past 5 years. Dozens of files were erased under Walter Kingston's authorization. Jessica and Erica took it straight to the Justice Department. The DOJ launched an obstruction investigation. Walter Kingston was subpoenaed. SkyWest stock fell another 12%. But in the middle of the chaos, something powerful happened. Former employees began to speak out, publicly. Not just to lawyers or journalists, but to each other. A black flight coordinator who'd been forced into a demotion. A Middle Eastern pilot repeatedly passed over for long-haul routes. A transgender flight attendant silenced after filing a discrimination report. They found strength in Jessica's leadership. Her case had become their cause. A movement began to grow. One night, Jessica sat alone in her office, watching a live stream of a rally happening outside SkyWest headquarters. Hundreds of people held signs. "We stand with Jessica. Diversity is not a threat. Airlines must change." She pressed her fingers together in front of her mouth, her heart pounding with something unfamiliar, hope. Not personal vindication. Not revenge. But purpose. This wasn't just about one seat on a plane anymore. It was about reclaiming the space every marginalized voice had been denied. In a sealed conference room, SkyWest's board met again. This time with Sandra Reeves. The board was fractured. Bleeding trust. And desperate. Sandra didn't mince words. You don't need a PR makeover. You need a full amputation. You bring me in, I clean house, every policy, every executive, every system. Or you collapse. After 4 hours, a decision was reached. Sandra Reeves was appointed interim CEO of SkyWest Airlines. Her first action. She called Jessica Carter. Jessica, Sandra said, her voice strong and sure, I'm not calling as a courtesy. I want you on the board. Jessica paused. That's bold. Sandra chuckled. So was freezing $120 million on a flight full of corporate cowards. We need your voice. And your fire. Jessica didn't respond immediately. She thought of the young woman at the terminal who thanked her. Of the messages. Of the nights she couldn't sleep because the anger was too loud. I'll do it, she said. But not as a figurehead. If I come on that board, we burn the whole old playbook and write a new one. Sandra smiled. Deal. The following weeks marked the beginning of a revolution inside SkyWest Airlines. No one, especially not Bradley Thompson or his old guard allies, could have imagined. Jessica Carter took her seat on the board with the quiet authority of someone who didn't need to raise her voice to command the room. Her presence alone changed the energy in every meeting. She didn't come to polish reputations. She came to redesign the foundation. Sandra Reeves, now officially CEO, began issuing sweeping policy overhauls from day one. But it was Jessica's voice that kept the momentum from becoming another corporate facade. This isn't about putting up a poster of diversity in the lobby, Jessica told the board during her first session. This is about tracking who gets hired, who gets promoted, who gets heard, and who gets ignored. Data doesn't lie. Culture does. SkyWest's internal data, once hidden behind confidentiality clauses, was finally exposed. Less than 5% of pilots were people of color. Minority flight attendants had a 40% higher rate of disciplinary action. Only 2 executives in the company's 25-year history had been non-white, and neither had lasted more than a year. Now, with Jessica's oversight, that data became a weapon for change. She helped launch the Equity Dashboard, a live, transparent hiring and promotion tracker viewable by all employees. Quarterly reports on diversity targets were mandated and tied directly to executive compensation. But that wasn't all. Jessica led a new initiative, the Corporate Justice Fund, seeded with $50 million from SkyWest and expanded by contributions from other Fortune 500 companies now racing to clean up their own houses. The fund provided legal support, whistleblower protection, and workplace education across industries, not just aviation. Still, resistance remained. Old guard managers grumbled behind closed doors. One mid-level director sent an internal memo complaining that SkyWest had lost its identity to political correctness. Jessica read the memo aloud at a company town hall. Then she calmly announced his dismissal. Let this be clear, she said. If your identity depends on excluding others, you've mistaken power for purpose. Applause erupted in the room, not from corporate sycophants, but from ground crew, janitorial staff, gate agents, those who had suffered the invisible cuts of bias for years. Meanwhile, the fallout from the court case reached a new milestone. The Department of Justice issued a formal statement. Based on irrefutable evidence provided by the plaintiff, Judge Robert Harrington is under active investigation for corruption and collusion. His docket has been frozen pending review. Legal experts were already predicting disbarment and prison. As for Bradley Thompson, his arrest came like thunder. FBI agents arrived at his private golf resort in Arizona with warrants for obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence, discrimination, and witness intimidation. Handcuffed in front of his peers, Bradley's only words were, "She did this to me." But even then, he didn't understand. Jessica hadn't destroyed him. His arrogance had. News media praised Jessica's resilience, but she deflected the attention. "This was never just about me," she told CNN. "This was about the thousands of others who didn't have a camera rolling when they were degraded or dismissed. I just happened to be in the right place, with the right tools, at the right moment to say, enough." Her viral quote became a mantra for workers across industries. The right seat isn't a privilege, it's earned. And no one gets to take that away because they don't like who's sitting in it. SkyWest's transformation didn't go unnoticed. Airline watchdog groups ranked them as the #1 most improved workplace culture within months. Shareholder confidence soared. Former critics turned allies. Sandra and Jessica appeared on panels together discussing corporate reform, transparency, and the link between justice and profitability. But Jessica never lost sight of what this meant. At one open forum, a young employee stood up and said, "You don't know me, Ms. Carter, but I'm the daughter of a baggage handler who worked here for 20 years. He used to come home angry. Said they treated him like he was invisible. But last week, he got promoted to supervisor. He told me to say thank you for making him feel seen." Jessica's eyes welled, not out of sadness, but relief. "I see him," she said quietly. "And we're just getting started." But in the background, Jessica was already building something bigger. The Corporate Justice Foundation, her nonprofit dedicated to ending systemic discrimination in the American workplace, had grown rapidly. Partnering with civil rights groups, it launched pro bono legal clinics in 12 cities and helped more than 800 employees file formal grievances across various industries. Jessica was already thinking nationally. Some said she should run for office. Others said she should write a book. But Jessica knew her mission wasn't about legacy. It was about momentum. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the flight that started it all, SkyWest held a public event at its headquarters. Sandra took the stage first, addressing staff, partners, and press. "When we were in freefall, one woman refused to let us crash. She didn't destroy us. She rebuilt us. It is my honor to introduce the new chairwoman of the board, Jessica Carter." Jessica walked out to thunderous applause. She stood beneath the SkyWest logo, once a symbol of exclusion, now transformed into a beacon of change. She smiled and spoke the words that had lived inside her since that day in seat 34B. "Justice, like flight, isn't easy. It fights gravity. It burns fuel. It requires lift. But when it rises, when it soars, it changes everything beneath it." A warm breeze swept across the rooftop terrace of the SkyWest Tower, now renamed the SkyWest Equity Pavilion, where Jessica Carter stood with a glass of sparkling water in hand, watching the sun dip beneath the horizon. The skyline glittered like a promise. It had been exactly 1 year since she'd been asked to give up her first-class seat to a white man, and today, she stood as the most powerful figure not only in SkyWest Airlines but in corporate aviation at large. But the fight wasn't over. Inside, the celebration continued. SkyWest had just received the National Justice Leadership Award, presented by a coalition of civil rights organizations, acknowledging their transformation under Jessica and Sandra Reeves's leadership. The event was streamed live to thousands of SkyWest employees around the world, from janitors in Denver to air traffic controllers in Atlanta. When Jessica stepped back into the room, silence fell. Everyone rose to their feet. Sandra gestured to the podium with a grin. "It's your moment, Chairwoman." Jessica took the stage slowly, scanning the room, the very place where Bradley Thompson had once ruled with smug disdain. Now, that era was nothing but a cautionary tale. "I never imagined," she began, her voice calm but powerful, "that a flight I boarded to close a business deal would instead reroute my entire life." A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd. "But I want to be very clear, I didn't start this movement. I joined it. I stand on the shoulders of those who've spoken up for decades and been ignored, silenced, or punished. And I will never forget what it felt like to be humiliated, judged, and dismissed, simply for existing where someone didn't think I belonged. Her gaze swept across the room. You don't fix injustice by firing a few bad actors. You fix it by changing what gets rewarded, what gets tolerated, and what gets buried. We're not done. Not by a long shot. Thunderous applause filled the space. Months passed, and the changes only deepened. SkyWest's new Justice Review Council, chaired by Jessica, began auditing past discrimination cases across every department. Employees wronged in the past were contacted, settlements were issued, and, most importantly, systems were redesigned to prevent recurrence. Jessica also launched a mentorship initiative connecting young professionals of color with senior executives across multiple industries. Under her guidance, the NextGen Equity Fellowship was born, training over 300 interns from underserved communities in business strategy, aviation, and finance. Her face graced covers of Time, Forbes, and Harvard Business Review, not as a victim, but as a visionary. Headlines read: "The woman who grounded injustice and taught corporate America how to fly again." Jessica Carter's $120 million stand sparked a $1 billion cultural shift. From seat 34B to the boardroom, a blueprint for real change. Meanwhile, Bradley Thompson faced a very different reality. Now stripped of his wealth, reputation, and influence, he sat in a federal courtroom, hands folded tightly on the table as the judge read the charges: obstruction, retaliation, and conspiracy. The courtroom was packed. Jessica didn't attend to gloat. She didn't need to. The system that once protected him now held him accountable. His sentencing made national news: 5 years, no parole. It wasn't just a punishment. It was a message. The age of quiet impunity was over. At the annual Corporate Justice Foundation Gala, now a major national event, Jessica stood beside leaders, CEOs, and activists who had once watched her rise with quiet awe. This time, they followed her. She delivered the closing speech of the night. "There was a time," she said, "when being removed from a seat you rightfully paid for meant humiliation, silence, and shame. But today, in this room, and across this country, we've reclaimed that seat. We've bolted it to the floor. And we're inviting everyone who's ever been excluded to take their place beside us." She paused. Because justice isn't a destination. It's a commitment. And we choose it every day. As the room rose in applause, the lights dimmed behind her, casting a golden glow that stretched to every corner of the stage, a symbol of resilience, of truth, and of a future rewritten. At True Echo, we tell the stories that expose, inspire, and endure. Jessica Carter's fight for justice reminds us that courage doesn't always roar, sometimes, it simply refuses to be moved. If this story moved you, share it. Because the more we echo the truth, the harder it becomes to silence. And remember, the seat they try to take from you may be the very place you rise from. Subscribe now for more stories that fight back.